Hello, today we are talking about expired domains. I've had a few requests for this topic. It's definitely quite a trending topic in the SEO community and has been for a few years. It can be a really big shortcut, and it also can be a money pit and a rabbit hole that you just don't want to go down to. So before we begin, I'm Stewart Vickers. I'm the world's top SEO for coaches. I've also got a link building agency and various other done-for-you services, basically trying to reverse the decline of the SEO industry with lots of shady agencies that will basically charge you a massive retainer for strategy and then not really do any work. And then when you poke them a bit, they might give you some very vague deliverables. So instead, we only focus on deliverables. We only focus on what works. And 90% of SEO is just content and links. So on the subject of links, let's get into expired domains. Expired domains work because if a company goes bankrupt or something like that, then most people don't actually bother to renew the domain names because administrators don't know about SEO. So Google rates you in two ways. If you're watching this video, you probably already know that. It's the quality and relevance of your content and the quality and power of other websites linking to you. So if you have a business, even if you don't do any SEO at all, it's very likely that over time you're going to build up some authority because of all these other websites linking to you, whether it's directories, Wikipedia. If you have a proper business, you're going to attract links. It's as simple as that. If you're doing something like an event or a conference, chances are you're going to be mentioned in loads of industry publications. Now, in the case of something like a conference, you might find that it's some conference2016.com. And then, of course, after that conference is finished, you can't really use that domain anymore because it's got the date in it. So you just let it expire. Same thing with companies. If companies build up, but then they go bankrupt, then the administrators are not going to worry about the domain renewal fee. So they think there's some money to save. I actually have a friend who he runs a marketing agency. He's had several different businesses, and he actually has a tattoo on his wrist, which is the logo of his first company. And he let that domain expire because the company went bankrupt, didn't want to bother with the renewal fees. And since then, talking to a few people in the industry, they've all said, you realize that domain name was worth quite a lot of money. And it did turn up on one of these resale sites that I'm actually going to talk you through. So what's the importance of all this to us? If you can get an expired domain, whether it was a conference that doesn't happen anymore or a company that went out of business, maybe it got acquired. And again, with the acquisition, they didn't bother to renew the old domain name. These things happen. Then you can actually leverage that domain for your own purposes. So you have the website, it's got all these links pointing at it, but the domain expires, that website disappears, but there's still all these links around the internet pointing at this empty space, just this domain name. And if you know what you're doing, you can go in and snap up that domain name. Some of these do actually loiter around. There's a tactic of link building where you basically find broken links. So you might find that Forbes has linked to a website that no longer exists, in which case you can register that domain name for $10 or so and redirect it so that Forbes link points at your site. And you're only going to lose a little bit of the power through the redirect, but generally it's accepted that 80% of the power of that Forbes link will still come into your website. So some people will actually use this as their main link building strategy and just help themselves to all these little links around the internet by redirecting them onto their site. And that's quite lengthy. And in reality, most good domain names do get snapped up very quickly. And that's because there's loads of resellers out there, which we'll come on to shortly. So how does this actually work and how legitimate is it? So that website disappears, that domain has gone. So if you then own that domain name, you can put your own website on it and immediately get all these links pointing at you. Plus the domain also has some history and trust with Google. Or you can simply redirect it so that all those links bounce off that domain and go to your website instead. So we know that links, they're expensive. Good quality editorial links, you're looking at a minimum of $200 to $300 per link. Whereas you can, and if we look at major news articles, things like that, we're talking about $500 to $1,000 per link. Whereas you can buy an expired domain name that has arguably 10, 20 grand's worth of links pointing at it. And you can simply have those links for yourself. Plus, it saves you all the work of actually going out and doing that. So this can be done perfectly legitimately. Is Google going to penalize this? You want to make it look very natural. So my favorite example of this is always teslamotors.com, which rebranded to tesla.com. Now, of course, Tesla Motors were smart. They didn't just let the domain expire, they redirected it to their new brand. But I've seen so many examples where someone's rebranded and they haven't kept the old domain name. So in this case, we can see examples like New York Times, Forbes, where teslamotors.com has been referenced within an article. Here we are. So it's a link to teslamotors.com. But now if we click on it, it's going to redirect to the current tesla.com. So this is why Google has no hope really of penalizing these kinds of sites, because domains change all the time. There are acquisitions, there are rebrands, all sorts of cases where it's perfectly legitimate. Another one, big affiliate marketing case study was the Wirecutter, and the Wirecutter now redirects to the New York Times, which bought it. It's like that. In this case, New York Times actually built a section on its website for the Wirecutter. So perfectly legitimate. How can we do this for our own purposes? Basically, you want to, as with everything with Google, you can't really take the piss. You need the new site to very closely mirror the old site. So don't take a local restaurant and then redirect it to a payday loans website. Through sheer power alone, that might work for a short time, but it's very likely if that ever gets audited, then you're going to be penalized. So be safe, be cautious, because you don't want to build. Churn and burn is a valid strategy, I don't deny that. But if you're putting all this effort, domains are expensive, you probably don't want to churn and burn them. So if you value your business and you do want a long-term outlook, then make sure you only buy domain names, whether it's to rebuild or to redirect. Make sure they closely match the niche that you currently operate in. So I've done this for email marketing, where I've taken email tools, rebuilt the domain name so it was an email tool, and now it's promoting email marketing products for an affiliate commission. That's within the realms of plausibility. And what others have I done? So the closer you can get to the original domain, the original niche, then the better, because it just looks natural. So how do you actually go and find these domains? The popular free option is actually expireddomains.net. I have used this in the past, but these days I don't bother. I know there's people who do use it, but it does tend to be the bottom of the barrel. So they're quite cheap, and you can find some gems. But generally, so many people look at these domains, not really going to be any valuable ones here. Another popular option is Spamzilla. This is great if you're either embarking on a big project or doing lots of expired domain work en masse. I don't have a subscription anymore because, frankly, I went far too deep into the rabbit hole of expired domains, spent far too much money, too many projects, and I just want to get out of it and focus on my existing projects for now. So be very careful going down that rabbit hole. But the way Spamzilla works, it basically monitors all sorts of different sources like GoDaddy auctions, gives you lots of SEO data on the domains from multiple different sources, as well as things like the expiring or the auction end date. So this means you can get a good glimpse of everything that's going on. You can't search it with a free plan, but with a paid plan you can. So if we just take an example, live preserved plants, that sounds pretty good. Also, Spamzilla very helpfully actually gives you screenshots to save you having to go and dig into the Wayback Machine. I'll explain shortly about the process for vetting expired domains. But basically, you want to make sure these expired domains haven't been churned and burned before. Has someone done a bad redirect, or have they used it as what's called a PBN? So Spamzilla gives you good screenshots of that, as well as an overall Spamzilla score, which tells you if it's a reliable domain or not. So I quite like this one, newyorkfood.com, gamealbums.com. So we can see the majestic trust flow, citation flow. So in this case, all we'd have to do, if we're looking at gamealbums.com, we can then go through to the GoDaddy auctions. So estimated value 1,300, that's entirely robotic. But you can also, of course, just go into the GoDaddy auctions itself and see everything that's coming up. But I don't recommend you do this for my own exact horror story, where I think it was on Spamzilla that I identified this domain. It was for an interesting niche that I wanted to get into. I could see big affiliate potential. So I thought, great, spend £1,000 on the domain. I'll have £5,000 worth of links, and I can start selling 5 to 10k products, which will give me a commission of $500 a go. Easy money, no way this can go wrong. Except, first of all, if you take the eBay approach and bid on GoDaddy auctions at the last minute, then actually basically restarts the counter. No one can bid last minute, at least when I was doing this a couple of years ago. I don't think that's changed. So if you bid at the last minute, it will then extend the auction by another minute or two. So I was there waiting to the last minute, placing a bid, and then having to wait another 2 minutes. In the meantime, someone else could come and outbid me. So it was the pandemic. I was at home and bored and way too fixated on these types of things. So I ended up bidding too much, spending too long at it. And then what happened was I quite quickly realized this was an international brand, and I checked the trademark in the US. But when later on I looked on the Wayback Machine, looked at the screenshots, there was actually a trademark for the UK side. So that got me very worried. So in the end, I actually ended up redirecting it to a fresh domain, which meant this was a fresh domain that had only just started. So when you redirect that old website, you actually lose a lot of those benefits of the old website, because the new domain is obviously not going to get traction easily, even if you redirect a powerful expired domain. Then 6 months later, Ahrefs updated its database. So this domain went from a DR of something like 40, 48, right down to about 16 or so. So all sorts of issues there. And this is part of the danger with expired domains. So what should you actually look for in an expired domain? If we take this example, Spamzilla has already done quite a good job. Spamzilla score of 3, so it's clean. So you can get the screenshots here. So basically what you want to do is look at the Wayback Machine, and you just want to find the history. So how old is it? In theory, domains are a lot more powerful if they've only expired recently. If possible, you still want keywords in the Google index if you possibly can. So first of all, let's look at the power. GameAlbums.com. Now, what I tend to do here is try and assign a value to these links and just get a general idea of how good these links are. So first of all, I'm seeing a lot of forum links. They tend to be quite low value. We've got all these sites like Falca.com, Yerkum.com, which are just aggregator data scraper links, so they don't really have any value. So what I tend to do is sort by DR. Let's do follow. And what I'm trying to do here is just gauge an approximate value of the domain. So no real value to these links. We can also switch this to in content links, just to try and get a like with like of what would happen if you built these links with an agency like mine. So we're not really seeing any good quality links here. Whereas if we go on to a marketplace like ODYS, or Odys, I know Craig Campbell, my friend, has been having some debate about whether it's Odys or ODYS. I was saying Odys, then he was always saying ODYS, so I switched, and apparently that's wrong now. So if we look at a premium age domain like lifecraze.com, and look at the backlinks in this case, then I expect this should have some really good links. So there we go, TechCrunch, healthandtime.com, today.com. So already, what's it going to cost to get a link on today, if you can even buy it? Chances are it's going to be $500 plus. TechCrunch, much the same thing. There are a lot of links here that money simply can't buy unless you have a really good PR firm. So if I were to just go through and count these, if we want to do follow links in content, let's put in a minimum DR of 30. Those are the links that I build in my agency. Minimum domain traffic of 1,000, minimum DR of 30. So we see we've got 22 groups of links. So even if we said each of these was just $100, that's still $2,200 worth of value. Chances are it's a lot more than that. So ODYS is currently, here we go again, ODYS is selling this domain for $4,000, $4,800. So then the next step, as I say, is to go into the Wayback Machine, and you want to basically look at the history of a domain and work out basically, is it legitimate? Is it an actual business that has recently gone out of business, or has it been repurposed in the meantime for spam purposes? Now you might think, how do I know if it's been spammed or not? Trust me, it's quite obvious. You'll generally have a very poor quality template, and normally it's just full of Chinese writing with links. Let's go back to the peak. And this will also give you an idea of what the domain needs to be, and therefore how relevant it is to your project. So Wayback Machine does often lose a lot of the formatting, so that's not a problem. So goal-orientated website. So this is the actual business. So you basically want to go through and check each of these snapshots to see if at any point it's been abused. If we use one of these from expireddomains.net, I'd be willing to bet that most of these have been abused. So it's actually taken me surprisingly long to actually find an example of an abused domain. Typical as I'm doing a video, but normally you run into them all the time. So I've got this Ghana City Guide. It's only got a DR of 2. The Ahrefs database is updating all the time in terms of different inflation tactics. So often certain tactics will for a while actually massively inflate the DR. So you may find that 2 years ago this could have been a really big, supposedly powerful domain, but in reality is things like Pinterest and YouTube links inflating it. So that can change. But even then, DR of 2, few backlinks. So on the face of it, it could be, you could feasibly spend $10 to register that domain and therefore get some of that power. So one step you want to try is actually to check if it's still indexed, where you do site:/domain. Now here we can see it's not currently indexed. So that is a potential sign that's been de-indexed, or rather penalized by Google. So if we go back to the Wayback Machine, this is an example of how domains get ruined, basically, where here we can see Ghana City Guide as it was in 2005, and we can see it was a Ghana City Guide, not really a problem there. And did seem to evolve a bit, businesses do, so it became more of a local shopping guide. I don't really have a problem with that. That still seems to be local, like a local classified ad. But then if we come later, suddenly in 2017, it became Purple Dot's online point of sale. And we can see this is basically just an advert. Do you have a shop of warehouses? So there's nothing really relevant here to the old Ghana City Guide. And now you get different use cases. Some are worse than others. So this already, they've taken an old domain name and just slapped up their own content on top of it. You can also get what are called PBNs, which I talk about in other videos, where basically you get these expired domains, put basically very thin basic content on them, and then link to your own site from it. And that could be a really powerful link, especially as remember that backlinks are dilutionary. So if you have a DR30 site, but it links out to 1,000 websites, then you're not getting much power. So if you buy a DR20 expired domain and link to yourself and only yourself, all that power gets concentrated through that link. So that can be very powerful. Now, that's absolutely against Google's terms of service. So when doing this, it's quite common. You'll find these domains which have been rebuilt into a page of content, but it'll be completely full of hundreds of links to normally a certain industry. So that doesn't seem to be the case here, but that's a classic red flag. If the domain has been rebuilt with a single page and you're just seeing loads of links everywhere, especially to supplements, escorts, whatever, and then that's a sign it's a PBN, in which case, why didn't they maintain it? Chances are it got burnt, it got de-indexed, it was therefore no longer useful, so they got rid of it. So the important thing is, when you're building these types of sites using expired domains, you don't want to be the sucker where Ahrefs still says it's a DR20, but it's actually been penalized at some point. So the old owner got rid of it because it wasn't working for them anymore. Don't make the mistake of thinking, well, this is a good, powerful domain that can help me out. And in reality, it's burnt out. Also checking the site :domain, that's also a good way to check if it's still indexed. If it expired fairly recently, then you definitely expect something to still be in the indexed. It could still be indexed, just with no content if it's a very old domain. So this could go either way. So how do you actually avoid these pitfalls? You can go with a service like ODYS, Odys. Odys is really good. They actually do a lot of screening checks. So every one of these domains, they're checked for trademarks. That's another thing you need to check. So if you just search trademark database, something like USPTO, this one. This is all changed. There we go. But this way, obviously in an ideal world, you'd have an expert do this for you. But as a basic first step, take your domain and just check that it's no longer trademarked. So what Odys do is they actually go away and do all this for you. So they check the backlinks, they check the Wayback history to make sure it's not been penalized, and they check that it's not trademarked. Now, the downside is you pay an awful lot of money for that. Odys domains are pretty much all over $3,000, and I've spent a fortune with them before. And at the time, I really enjoyed it. I got genuinely addicted to the fact that you can see all these opportunities where, with the logo and everything, that basically created this wall of potential brands that you could take over. In reality, it's often a load of failed brands. But even so, how tempting is that when what I generally do for my niche research is I'll look at which of these are available and then see what affiliate programs and what search volumes I can find to fit those potential markets. So something like coin gainers, that's probably going to be a crypto thing. Make sure to check any of the metrics they give, because obviously these change all the time. So it's always worth double checking. But a year or two ago, I was actually given a, in my view, big shortcut, big knowledge bomb, which was actually SEO.domains, which is very similar to Odys, but it's a much bigger database and they're much cheaper. So there are some very premium ones in here, but I've just been searching school for a potential client, and we can see it says DR42 here. Again, you got to check the metrics; they're pretty much always wrong. But $1,500. It's in German. Let's find something a bit more reasonable. So I was looking at this local school in Brighton, supposedly DR21. Either way, it's 45 domains. That's only $100. So in my case, anytime I am going back into expired domains, I tend to use SEO.domains. It saves me from trawling through auctions and competing in auctions. The downside is you do still have to do a lot of the work in terms of trademarks and auditing the actual domain. I found pretty much all these domains have actually had their domain ratings inflated. I don't think SEO.domains do that, but one way or another, it happens. So let's find a good example. So this is the website of a dance school. So this is saying it's a DR of 34. Let's see if that's still valid. 32, so it's pretty much got it right. And it's actually ranking for keywords. Now, that's a big win for me. If a domain is still ranking for keywords in Ahrefs, then that's huge. That means Google's still, this domain's still warm, basically. It's not been dead for so long that you basically got to try and revive it and warm it up again. So what I do is I go to the backlinks again. First of all, just a general sense check. This is the same as we do in my link building agency. Every link we build, we check it through about 15, 20 different steps to make sure, is the domain rating accurate? Have the links been inflated? And this is just basic sense check. So we can see here, radiofrance.fr, DR89, paris.fr. So these are really good links. Then we start getting into Web 2.0. So anything that's like that, conservatoire.not, or anything, there's another one here, forumsmademoiselle.com. If it's forum links, subdomains, those kind of slightly dodgy links, then I tend to disregard those. They probably do still have some power, but I prefer to ignore them from my valuation process. Same with WebWiki, anything like that, Wikimond. So in my case, I only want to look at TNT code. That's another classic one. Big list of websites. Ignore all of those. So this is already looking pretty good. Now I can go further and say I want do follow, minimum of 30. I'll ignore traffic for now, but I might do in content. So this is basically telling me if I use a link building agency like my own, how much would it actually cost to get these links? So we can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4 DR80 plus links. So that's already massive. Then 1 to 72, a couple of 60s, some 49s, they're doubling up. We've got we want 1 link per domain. So ultimately it comes down to 16 unique do follow backlinks to in content. Now I think because of the do follow, we've lost a few of the media ones, but still 89, 86, 85, 83. So we're already looking at more than the grand's worth of links here. So how much would this actually cost? 1,450. Note that it is French, so obviously you want a location that matches the where you want to sell with your business. So I think for the right niche, this could be a really good purchase. So same domain like this from OGRYS, probably significantly more than 1,500. If I take all these off, then again, we can see there are a lot of really good, powerful links there. So we've got Wikipedia, Radio France. Remember, no follow links still do have some power. Express. Actually, these are all do follow, so it must have been the in content filter that was hiding some of these. So I'd have no problem with most of these. Even a single link like Messy Nessie Chic, that's a really big blog. I don't know if they'd even be willing to give me a link, but you'd expect to pay several $100s at least to get a link like that. So lots of value there. So I'd say that's a strong maybe. Again, you want to either go into the Wayback Machine, go through the trademark database, just cover your steps there, do your due diligence. But 1,450 for those good links, domain rating of 32, I'd be happy with that. Now the question is, what do you do with it in this case? There's 3 things you can do with expired domains. You can rebuild them, you can redirect them, or you can use them to build a PBN. So Center Rick Odums, that's not really a name I can use. If I were to put a site on it, if it were just a straight churn and burn affiliate, then maybe I wouldn't mind so much. But generally speaking, that doesn't look like a good brand name to me. If it was something like arcanet.co.uk and Arcanet isn't trademarked, then that's a good brandable domain. I could probably just rebuild that website for my own architecture business. But if you already have a website or the domain you're looking at just simply doesn't look appealing as a brand for you, then you can redirect it. Now, the recommendation is that you actually rebuild the domain before you redirect it, even if you are going to redirect it, because all those links pointing at it, they've been dead for a long time. And so Google's basically disregarding them. You want to revive it on its own domain. Wait till you start getting some ranking, so you just get some keywords coming back. I'd take the extra step of running all the backlinks through an indexing service like Omega. I've got a separate video where I talk about indexing. Have a look. Just to make sure all those links are indexed and Google can see this domain is alive, all these links are pointing at it, and it's like a current website. Then you can redirect it. So as far as Google sees, you just swapped out that the website's just moved, basically. So all those links then bypass that website and go to your website instead. You then get that power. Now, it normally takes a couple of months to actually get the benefit from that. It's very difficult to measure. So this is why I'm always quite wary about the big marketing pitch we always get, that with expired domains, they say it's a big shortcut that you can basically put some content on it, and within a few weeks, you're getting traffic. Now, I've definitely had that happen, but I've also had the complete opposite, where I've put really high quality content, rebuilding an existing powerful expired domain that's really good quality, and nothing has happened for months. And by the time something does start happening, I don't even know. Is that because of the domain, or could I put this content on a fresh domain and had the same results? Maybe even better results. Sometimes some domains don't even, it's not that they've been penalized, but they might have some friction attached to them for some reason. So I'd be very careful with that. With a PBN, and you basically just want to put a basic page of content on the site, rebuild any of the existing pages, and then when it starts getting some traction, you can then put a link through to yourself. You just got to be careful with the hosting. You don't want all your dodgy PBN on the same hosting, because that's a footprint. Google can see the IP address. So you need to make them all look like different websites on separate hostings. The best shortcut is just use Cloudflare. Cloudflare will give you for free a separate IP address. So it looks like different hosting, and there'll be thousands of websites on that same IP address. So no one's going to be able to tell that they're interconnected. Now, whichever step you take, whether you're rebuilding it, redirecting it, or building a PBN out of it, what you want to do is go onto Ahrefs and go to Pages Best by Links and work out which pages have got the most links pointing at them, because then we can sort this by, normally do follow links in my case. Now you want to rebuild these pages. So here we can see normally 90% of the links go to the home page, so that's fine. But then we have /CIDJ, that's got 22 do follow links pointing at it. So you definitely want to reconstruct that page. Now, one technique is to fill that page with content that's relevant to what it used to be, and then internally link within that page to your main money pages, the pages you actually want to rank, using exact match anchor text for the internal link. Because that way you're kind of filtering the link power. So the link power is coming in for the old topic, and then that page then links out directly. You have a paragraph talking about your exact topic, linking to that page on your topic where you expect to make money. And that way it's all legit. It all makes sense. So you've got relevant links coming to a relevant page, and that's passing that power to a related subject with its own context, basically. So you don't want any of these to be dead pages. If you just throw up this domain on WordPress, these will come up as 404s, and you'll lose the power of that link. And if you just redirect them, then again, you're not getting those links properly warmed up again and re-indexed. There's even a theory that if you redirect them all to the homepage, which is common, then you're actually Google might actually treat your homepage as a soft 404. If it sees that it's the default for dead pages, then again, that's a reason it might disregard those links. So you can use the Wayback Machine, ideally rewrite it. So keep to the same topic and just put a page of content about whatever was here before. So go through, you don't have to do all of them necessarily, but any important links that you really value, make sure they're not going to the 404. Make sure you rebuild these pages. And that applies whether you're redirecting it, rebuilding it, or PBNing it. Even with the PBN, you generally want, it's normally the home page, but you definitely want to keep the most powerful page and put your links on that. Now, it's also this that gives me one of my biggest skepticisms about expired domains, where you are having to basically wedge your way into an old niche. So you take this old domain and you try and make it fit your brand. And if you're not careful, your actual money pages that you actually want to rank, they might not actually be getting much power from it. So for one thing, have a look at the anchor text. So brand name anchor text is most common. So you can see Ricodum, Center Ricodums. None of these are saying dance school. So if you've got your website, you're trying to rank for dance school, you want a lot of your anchor text to all say dance school and variations of that. So if all the anchor text is for the previous brand name, yes, you're getting the power, but you're not really getting the relevance of that link. So it's something, but it's not great. So if you've got a question, if I'm spending $2 to $3 grand on an expired domain versus just building links, if I'm building links, then I can have full control of those links, make sure they go to my money page that I actually want to rank with the correct anchor text for that niche, so that page can actually rank. Whereas if I spent that money on an expired domain, yes, I'm getting a lot of power from it. Most of that power is going to the home page, and all those links pointing at it are talking about someone else's brand rather than my brand. So you're getting the power, but it's not quite as seamless. So obviously, if we all had infinite budgets, it would definitely be recommended to do bespoke link building for your niche. So it's your brand, your keywords on the pages you choose, pointing at the pages you actually want to rank. So that's the limitation of expired domain names. I have got very frustrated just through my own experience that people see expired domain names and promote them as this magic bullet. So you've got these vendors like Odis making $3,000 to $4,000 on each domain name, and there's no guarantee it's going to work. Sometimes it does, and of course we have survivorship bias. So in all the Facebook groups and blogs, podcasts, everyone talks about the success stories, whereas I bought this expired domain and it instantly took off. I skipped the sandbox, not forgetting that's the biggest draw of expired domains for most of us, where you start a new domain and then you just wait 6 months before anything happens. Whereas in theory, an expired domain skips that. I'd say most of the time, my expired domains still have a sandbox period where nothing really happens. I've definitely had the opposite. I've had the sales pitch where it really does work right away. But in comparison, if I'd taken that money and spent it on a good link building campaign early on, I might have got similar or even better results for the same investment. So I'm speaking as a recovered addict. I really was buying an expired domain name every couple of months or so, starting a new site. And when you build those expired domains, you do want to get link building soon so that you can actually get those pages ranking. So that's one advantage of expired domains, where normally with a link building campaign, you've got to warm up slowly, because if you're a fresh domain, DR0, you can't hit that with 20 backlinks a month all of a sudden, because Google will be suspicious. Whereas with an expired domain name, if you put your main money page on it, your affiliate page, whatever, and then you start hitting it with links, that looks much more natural, because the links you've built are very small in comparison to the overall link profile. The overall link profile is huge with hundreds of links, so a few more links isn't going to make that much difference. But just in terms of consumer advice, don't get carried away. They really can not work. I personally have actually borrowed money, put it on credit cards, things like that, just to buy an expired domain name, which I expect is going to take off immediately. And I've had to wait a year or more just to get traffic, never mind even getting my money back. So I do like them. I think they're a great shortcut, but people are definitely selling the dream, and the dream is not always the reality. So be very careful. These days, I'm not really spending that much on expired domain names. I can find really good ones for probably less than $2,000, and that's more my comfort zone now. Whereas in the past, I've spent $7,000 on an expired domain before and put that on a credit card. So don't do what I did. Not forgetting, we've also got exact match domains. I'll talk about those in a video as well, where if you got the .com for your keyword, then you actually rank really well without many links, and you lose that if you use an expired domain. With an expired domain, you've actually got to stick with either the existing domain name or redirect it to your expired domain. So a lot of the time I will actually build a fresh domain from the start because I've got control over that keyword. So but overall, great shortcut. If you can find a really niche relevant domain that really is a good fit for your business, and you can get $5,000 worth of links, or even impossible to get links that money can't buy, and you can get that for $1,000 to $2,000, by all means go for it. There are definitely advantages there. And especially if you want to build your own high quality PBN as well. If you're buying PBNs online, they can work, but you don't really know what you're getting. Whereas if you build your own, then it's truly private. You can hide it and you can get all the power from those links rather than someone who's just selling them to everyone. So definitely those are advantages there, but don't believe the dream, don't fall for the hype. Do your due diligence and make sure you're still getting good value.